So the Jets finally got a win last night, ending their losing streak at 5, but the Texans might have a massive problem on their hands. It's an issue that is so big they could even find themselves out of the playoffs at the end of the season if they do not get this fixed ASAP. So we've got to talk about that, some of the best matchups and storylines heading into Week 9, plus some key injury news from around the league right after. First up, the Jets finally got a win last night as they beat the Texans on Thursday Night Football after losing their last 5 games. It was pretty much a snooze fest in the first half as the Texans had a 7-0 lead thanks to a Joe Mixon touchdown in the second quarter. However, it should have been 7-7, but Jets rookie receiver Malachi Corley dressed up as a dumbass for Halloween, and he dropped the ball before he crossed the goal line, and it resulted in a touchback Texans ball. So things were looking pretty gross for the Jets at halftime, with their own fans booing them throughout. But then Aaron Rodgers smoked a mountain of ayahuasca in a dark section of the locker room during halftime and lit the world on fire in the second half. After throwing for just 32 yards in the first half, he was 15 of 18 for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second. Good God. It was a dream come true for Jets fans as both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson balled out. Adams had 7 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown, with Adams' score being pretty epic because the guy basically came back from the locker room after being evaluated for a concussion and caught the walk-off touchdown in a pretty electric play. Then Garrett Wilson had 9 catches for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns, with his second one being this insane OBJ-esque one-handed grab that was initially ruled incomplete, but the call was reversed as his shin was down before he went out of bounds. The Commanders' Hail Mary last week is probably the play of the year, but this is definitely the catch of the year, at least so far. As for the Texans, CJ Stroud dressed up as Anthony Richardson for Halloween and completed 11, yes, you heard that right, of his 30 passes for 191 yards. He also fumbled in the red zone when the Texans were about to score in the first quarter, which was brutal. It's hard to blame him, though. His offensive line, particularly the interior trio, was getting eaten alive, and he was sacked 8 times on the night. Not only that, but he was pressured at an insane rate. I saw somewhere during the game, he was pressured on nearly 50% of his dropbacks as the interior of the O-line continues to be a problem. I mean, the interior is allowing the most pressures in the entire NFL, which was very evident last night as Stroud was literally running for his life and actually finished with the most rushing yards of any game so far in his career with 59. So yeah, a bad night for the O-line, and even more bad news is that their starting guard, Kenyon Green, is expected to be out for the season with a shoulder injury that he suffered in the second quarter of last night's game. I think Tank Dell was the bright spot out there in last night's game for the Texans. He caught 6 balls for 126 yards, but only 2 other receivers caught passes on the night, which is actually insane. Stroud has really been struggling the last 3 weeks. He's averaging just 187 yards per game and has only thrown 1 touchdown while losing 2 fumbles and taking 14 sacks during that span. Yes, 14! Houston lost 2 of these 3 games, losing to the Packers in Week 7 on a walk-off field goal, then barely beating the Colts last week, and now losing an ugly one to the Jets this week. They definitely missed Stefon Diggs and Nico Collins last night, that's for sure. Diggs, though, is out for the year with a torn ACL. That happened last week and freaking sucks. But Collins is eligible to come off of IR as soon as next week, and his recovery has reportedly been going well, so there's some optimism there, and they really need the guy out there on the field. However, I don't even know if that'll matter if Collins is back, if the Texans can't get this issue figured out with their interior O-line. I mean, it is such a problem that they could be in jeopardy of losing the division. Flacco could get it done with the Colts once all is said and done, and honestly, the Texans could miss out on the playoffs entirely. Well, let me know your thoughts on the Texans O-line. Do they concern you as much as it concerns me, or will Nico Collins be that much more of an added boost to the offense that it won't honestly matter? Next up, let's take a look at some of the biggest matchups and storylines heading into Week 9 of the season. First up, the Falcons are taking on the Cowboys at home in a game that Dak Prescott called a must-win game, and it's hard to argue that, honestly. Dallas is 3-4 and has fallen quite a bit behind the Commanders and Eagles in the NFC East. If they drop to 3-5, the odds of them making the playoffs become pretty unlikely. It's not as big of a game for the Falcons, but a win would give them even more separation over the Bucs, who are 4-4 and are playing the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. The Saints and Panthers are both out of the picture, so this division is really just a 2-horse race between Atlanta and Tampa. The Falcons have already won both head-to-head matchups this year, so they hold the tiebreaker should the Bucs catch up to them record-wise. Then, the Bengals are playing the Raiders, and honestly, the only reason I care about this game is because the Bengals are 0-4 at home, and it would be hilarious if they lose to the Raiders at home as well. Although, I don't really want the Raiders to win, so I guess I'm rooting for a tie so that neither team wins and the Bengals are still winless at home. Anyway, since he's likely to be without one of their key pieces on offense, as T. Higgins is listed as doubtful for this game. He missed last week with a quad injury and hasn't practiced all week so far, so there's probably a 99% chance he doesn't play. Speaking of AFC West teams that I hate, the Broncos are heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens in a battle of 5-3 teams. The Ravens are coming off that upset loss to the Browns after they won 5 straight, so they'll be looking to bounce back. This really should be a good one. The Ravens are putting up over 30 points a game, which is second in the league, and over 450 yards a game, which is first. The Broncos defense is elite, though. They're allowing just 15 points and 282 yards per game, both of which are third best in the league. The Broncos are hot right now. They've won 5 of their last 6, and Bo Nix is coming off of his best game as a pro, in which he threw for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns, although it was against the Panthers, so take that with a mountain of salt. And honestly, not to be a complete Chiefs homer here, but the Broncos are on fraud alert, in my opinion. Look at who they've played. Basically, they've only beat losing teams, piss-poor teams. I mean, the most impressive win was against the Bucs. They're 4-4 in week 3, but the Bucs just played the Lions a week prior, and teams that have played the Lions this year are 0-5 so far in their next games. Other than that, anytime they've played a semi-competent team, they've lost. So, we'll see what they're really made of this week, but I'm not getting my hopes up. Next up, the NFC West is ultra competitive this year, with the Cardinals, Niners, and Seahawks all being 4-4, and the Rams being right behind them at 3-4. For that reason, I'm definitely looking forward to the Rams and Seahawks game this week. The Rams are coming off a big win over the Vikings, in which they got both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, and they looked pretty freaking good out there. Matt Stafford is definitely a top 5 QB still in the NFL. But Puka exited practice early yesterday with a knee injury on the same knee that kept him on IR for 6 weeks. It is reportedly not believed to be serious, though, so there's some good news there. His status for this game is probably going to be up in the air at the moment, though. Sean McVay sounded optimistic about him playing, saying, "Fortunately, there's nothing structurally wrong with his knee. My expectation is that he's going to do everything in his power to be ready to roll," and that is the mindset we have. Another divisional game this week is the Packers and Lions. This is probably the game of the week, as the Lions are 6-1 and the Packers are 6-2, and whoever wins will take the top spot in the NFC North. The big story heading into this one, though, is the status of Jordan Love, who exited last week's game with a groin injury. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but did return in a limited fashion both yesterday and today, Friday, with he himself even saying that the chances of him playing this week seems realistic or is realistic. Head coach Matt LaFleur, though, told the media that Love is going to be listed as questionable, with it being a game-time decision, so we shall see. If Love does play, he probably won't be 100%, but this game should still be a banger, as the Packers are 6th in points per game and 5th in yards per game. They're going to have to hope and pray their defense steps up, though, as the Lions are a buzzsaw right now, putting up over 33 points per game, which is first in the NFL by far. Finally, the Vikings are hosting the Colts on Sunday Night Football after the NFL did us all a huge favor and flexed this game to primetime, as it was initially supposed to be the Jags gag and the Eagles. The Vikings have lost 2 straight after starting 5-0, but they're still top 10 in both scoring offense and defense. The 4-4 Colts will be starting Joe Flacco after benching Anthony Richardson because he's tired, needs some milk, and can't even complete a pass to save his life. Flacco definitely gives them the best chance to win now. The last time we saw him start, by the way, was week 5 against the Jags, when he threw 359 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Colts did lose that game, but it was more on the defense, as they somehow gave up 37 points to the Jags. That defense, by the way, is giving up over 150 rushing yards per game, which is 3rd to last in the NFL, so I'm expecting Aaron Jones to feast in this one. TJ Hawkinson will also be making his return, playing in his first game since he tore his ACL in week 16 last season. Now, the last time these two teams played, you'll remember this game, was way back in 2022, when the Colts went up 33-0 and the Vikings ended up coming all the way back to pull off the biggest comeback win in NFL history. I don't know if this game is going to be as exciting as that, but we should be in for a good one. And some quick hitter injury news from around the league. Derek Carr is expected to play this week after missing 3 games with an oblique injury. Will Levis might also be back for the Titans. He's listed as questionable after missing the last 2 games with a shoulder, but even if he is good to go on Sunday, there's no guarantee that he'll even start, as head coach Brian Callahan hasn't publicly named a starter for this week. I mean, take your pick. Will Levis or Mason Rudolph. They both are not great, to put it nicely. Then, Giants running back Tyrone Tracy cleared concussion protocol and should be good to go against the Commanders. Meanwhile, Cowboys cornerback Stefon Diggs will be a game-time decision with a calf injury. Plus, Micah Parsons and Deron Bland have both already been ruled out. And with that, I'll see y'all after the craziness that is going to be Week 9 as it takes place over the weekend and on Monday Night Football.